So anyways, thanks for dealing with the weirdness. But I'm glad we got a kindred spirit in the room, because that's legit.
We're with our hearts are linked. So
That's it. We're in
Now
forever.
we're ready.
Now we're ready. So anyways, I'm going to talk this morning on, they wanted us to, I guess, try to be theological. So let me see if I can give a shot on that at 9 in the morning. It will be a challenge anyways, right? But I brought my new book, Hope Equals Bold. If you want to grab this, I'm extremely excited about it. It's really making some good impact with a lot of people. I wrote it kind of in a 10-day study format, so it's kind of bite-sized format. I felt like I wanted to, this to me, I'm kind of saying it like this, like an appetizer that I'm working to building to a bigger portion later. My next book I'm already working on, I'm pretty fired up about, and you'll enjoy it, but I won't tell you about it yet. But Hope Equals Bold, I got a few copies out there if you want to grab that. It's pretty cool. Touch on some of that today, as I did sit in my topic. I was obedient. I was one of the good guys. I don't know about the rest of them. You came to the right class. And so we're going to talk about Hope Equals Bold as far as the topic goes. But I'm going to go a little bit different direction just to set it up than I did with the book, to help us just have some theological pursuits this morning in that. And so I'm going to really talk to us from what I utilize or communicate in the term present reality thinking. I see this as a significant scenario that for those of us in the body of Christ, really even the earth too. Come on in, man.
I'm just checking on you to make sure you're healthy.
I'm doing great. Blood's pumping. We're rolling. So it's great. Thank you. Present reality thinking is a really massive step in my mind to really on a theological front is trying to contend with the futurist mindset, with the futurist theological perspective. It's kind of, for those that would like to talk in those terms, it's a good direct shot, throwing the cannonball that direction to get to get the body of Christ to move away from being so parked on a futurist concept, to get us in present reality thinking, get us in the place of understanding what we have currently, where we are currently, and what's available currently, because it's in that, excuse me, and out of that we'll be able to function at our highest level of capacity and function in our boldest function. And so it's an important deal for me that we see this, because we have taken a little bit of history with my journey in this. About 4 years, almost maybe 5 years ago now, Spirit really spoke in my heart and said, I want you to carry the message of hope in the earth. And my initial response to that was, no thanks. I said, please don't make me do that. That was my initial reaction. I said, I'm not a cheerleader. I'm not a Hallmark card. I'm not Guy Smiley. I don't even mean this negatively. I was like, I'm not Joel Osteen. That was my frame of reference, right? I was like, I'm from a hardcore metal punk rock background. I just thought, no, please.
Going against brand.
I just thought, man, this isn't going to work, right? And so anyways, but his immediate response back to me was, that's because you don't know what hope is. I went, whoa, okay, you got my attention now, right? And so we've spent the last 4 or 5 years with this being the assignment that the Lord has given us to carry in the earth. And so out of that, we begin to really, I wanted to just say I stumbled upon 2 Corinthians 3:12. It's just a one-sentence verse that has been our life for the last 5 years, and that one-sentence verse has not stopped. The whole chapter is off the charts. We could spend the whole morning unpacking the entire chapter, because what is in chapter 3 of 2 Corinthians is highly significant. Paul was didn't beat around the bush. He started calling the Mosaic covenant the covenant of death, the covenant of condemnation. That's hefty language. It's heavy duty when if you will, that apostolic gift in history started to say of something that actually framed his whole existence, framed his whole life as a Pharisee. It's what he had built, designed, gave his entire life to, even stepped into murderous actions, standing upon the function of the covenant of death. He actually walked out what he called that covenant. He started producing death, killing people to uphold this covenant of death.
Real quick question, and I keep trying to get my brain off this. I don't know what you meant when you said futurist.
Oh, okay, that's okay. That's fine.
I keep thinking about it. Maybe he's going to talk about it. I just was distracted.
Well,
I'm gonna bring it up.
the future's important. There's nothing it's not negative. There is a future, right? We are moving
Right.
and we're progressing. Although, if we could break Harold's class, I'm sure it will help us break some of that Greek thinking that it's a linear scenario. But nonetheless, we are moving, advancing. We're not stationary and static, right? And so, the futurist theological concept, excuse me, is still that the things of the kingdom, things of God, things of His plans is to come in the future. That we are waiting to get there. You know, even if we just throw out some old school language, right? If we could just hold on long enough, you know, we're just pilgrims passing through. We're aliens. We don't belong here. This is not our home. So this whole idea that we're in this almost holding pattern of just, you know, even it's almost like this idea that, you know, the Catholic thought of purgatory was, right, you died and then went to this holding tank but it's almost like more modern Christianity, meaning within the last few centuries, has built this futurist idea to where it's almost like our existence right now could be, quote, purgatory. Like we're getting all this stuff burned out of us or whatever it is so we can get there and whatever. So,
which then puts our hope in a time that's not necessarily reachable to us.
Yes, it put in the context with hope, it puts it out there, which is what I'm contending for, is to say that hope is here. You know, if you do the Facebook hashtag hope is here has been, and you go hit that, a whole lot of posts in that regard. But the reality of hope, Scripture tells us, I'll just dive in this, as you already got me going a few different paths, right? You push a few buttons, all kinds of ways, which is fun, I love it. You know, Scripture tells us that hope deferred makes a heart sick, unhealthy, incapable, incapacitated, laid up, non-functionable. And so, hope deferred, to me, it's not rocket science when we just think about football. And at the beginning of every football game, they flip a coin to see who gets the ball first, right? And usually the team that wins the coin toss, what do? They defer their choice. And I don't know if we paid attention to this very well, that the idea of the understanding of deferred is to put off till later. So Scripture tells us that hope deferred incapacitates us. In other words, hope that's parked off till some other time or somewhere down the road causes us to live incapacitated. And so it's not at least in my experience, that verse has seemed to be more communicated and brought out. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to duplicate this for the next class.
No, the heart of it.
Right. That's the hard thing. All of a sudden, like you're asking questions, I'm going somewhere else. So at least in my experience, that verse, that idea has almost been communicated like when you don't get what you wanted. Then you're disappointed or you're sad or your heart. But see, in the contending of what we're doing and what we tried to lay out in the book is to really help us understand that hope is not a want or a wish. Although we use the word hope in our vocabulary almost unanimously connected to the idea of a want or a wish. Well, I hope it doesn't rain today. I hope you have a good day. I hope you're feeling better. I hope I get this for Christmas. I hope that... And what we're really saying is I don't want it to rain today, or I want you to have a good day, or I wish I could get this for Christmas or my birthday. But because we use the language, listen guys, semantics builds paradigms. Semantics is framework of thinking. And if we don't have right semantics, we're building wrong paradigms. And so I try not to be hyper stickler on language, but if we don't get the right language in play, we find ourselves limited in our capacity. And so when we see that hope is not a want or a wish, because if you could understand it like this, a want and a wish never moves you to do anything.
That's true.
I mean, I want to play the piano. Never made one effort to ever play the piano. And unfortunately, a lot of you say, I want to make $1 million, but that doesn't move us to make $1 million at all. I mean, could you imagine the U.S. government sending our military off to war to say, well, yeah, we want to win over there. I wish we'd win. Are you going to go put your life on the line because somebody wishes that you could win? There's no chance. A want or a wish leaves us in a weak state because our brains calculated that we don't have it. You don't want or wish for something you already have.
That's right. That's good. That's really good.
Wow.
And so really it sets you in a lack mindset. It sets you in the place of a poverty position because you're now living from what you don't have, trying and ultimately striving to get it. And so when we utilize the word hope wrapped around really in the context of want and wish, the word hope becomes very diminished in our reality. Hope becomes a very secondary situation. It becomes a very, well, wouldn't that be nice if? That's, for the most part, how our culture has come to embrace this word, hope. Therefore, we really don't even understand the context of what hope is. So when Spirit said to me, go carry the message of hope in the earth, my first response was, not thanks. Please no. It's because I could only understand it from the framework that was, you want me to go just try to cheerlead everybody to what they're wanting to get to? I was like, I mean, I'm an encouraging gift by nature, but that ain't what I was looking to do. And so when he began to unfold the understanding that hope is not about a want or a wish, it's not even, I don't mean to fight with Strong's, but the reality is Strong's is only working with the language he understood as well, right? Uh-oh. I mean, because Strong's is not the ultimate authority on everything. We can find better language.
Yeah.
And I think like with hope too, it's all like even now it has almost kind of been affiliated with disappointment. Like instead of it actually being something to like go forth in and like embrace, it's become something that it's paired with disappointment.
Thank you. I think that's very accurate. It's what we try to console people with, and it's what we try to offer situations that are rough. And it's certainly when we embrace and access hope, it's certainly part of a journey out of tough things. But it's amazing to think how we're told that we have these three things forever. Faith, hope, love.
Wow.
But I don't know about you, but because the next verse that says, but the greatest of these is love, well, why would you ever talk about hope and faith if the greatest is love? Just talk about love. It's the greatest, right? Why worry about second place and third place? Let's just talk about first place. But until you dig in there a little bit and recognize that the Greek word for greatest there, the Greek word there, for us to use the English word greatest is very limiting to our brain. Because when we hear the word greatest, when we hear the English word greatest, our mind runs to the idea of the best, the most important, the biggest, the major, the greatest incapacitated. And so it elevates, right? Well, the Greek word there is not about elevating something to a higher status than the other one. So the English word eldest, E-L-D-E-S-T, is actually a better English word there than greatest. Wow. So the eldest of these is love. The eldest means simply the one that came first.
Yeah.
My eldest son is not more important than my other three children. Now, I'm the eldest, and we may feel that we're somehow elevated above, right? All the firstborns, right?
Yes.
Fist bump.
Yes.
We might feel that we're superior than everybody else, but the reality is we are not. And so love, being the eldest, is not more important than hope and faith. It's simply that love came first. So that allows us, when we connect Hebrews 11, that faith is the evidence of things hoped for. We connect the dots to understand that faith is the product of hope.
Oh, wow.
Hope is the product of love. So when we see faith, hope, and love, you can actually reverse it to understand this, that it's love that begets hope, hope that begets faith. So there is no superiority amongst the three. It's simply the process of the unfolding of love.
Which in that thinking, faith we also equate to a wish also.
Yes.
Many
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
You're right.
So hope begetting faith is not a wish begetting faith. It's actually way more solid.
It's
than
totally
we ever-
solid. Hope is, and see, and this is where we're trying to get to with present reality thinking. Hope, we've come to define it. We've moved off of Strong's language to create reader language. If I could just be so bold, Hope's got a lot of hope. So
Be so
Do it.
strong.
I'm telling you, I'm going for it. The Greek word elpis, E-L-E-S-P, however it's spelled, it's too early in the morning. Elpis, Strong's would define it as a joyful expectation. And I don't know that that's necessarily something negative. We all want a joyful expectation. But I had to give a whole lot of thought on the fact that expectation still communicates something that I'm required to do.
Right.
Which leaves me in a very unstable situation, because today my expectations might be here, tomorrow my expectations might be here. And so if hope is left to the understanding of an expectation, we're stuck with this,
Yeah.
which gives us no solid ground to be bold with.
Right.
We are not bold when we're down here, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to understand, at least for me, I began to re-articulate the language to something much more solid to say to us that hope is the unconditional assurance. Father's goodness prevails. Hope is the unconditional assurance. Father's goodness prevails. That is a joyful expectation, but that's something
also
much more
praise.
solid.
Yeah.
Because it's assurance. It's a guarantee. It's concrete. In other words, it's eternal.
Yeah.
We have these three forever. Faith, hope, and love are not a fluctuating situation. We've presumed them to be that because we've connected them to a wish or a want. God's love, Father's love, does not fluctuate. And it's easy for us when we think about faith, hope, and love, or love, hope, and faith. When we think about those, it's like it's easy for us to embrace that love is unconditional, solid, doesn't fluctuate. But for some reason, we're more challenged to think of hope and faith in the same context. We look at hope and faith as, well, I don't know, today maybe I have faith. Because, we're all told to don't get your hopes up. But hope can't go up.
That's a good word.
That is good.
Father's love can't go up. It's already at its apex. There's no higher measures of Father's love to be available. It's 100%. It's full tank.
Yeah.
And hope and faith are the products of that. They're not a lesser scenario. The greatest doesn't mean more important. Love is not something of higher superiority. It's simply the one that came first. Hope follows the same suit. It's already at its highest apex. You can't get more hope. See, present reality thinking. Hope is already, right now, currently, presently, at its highest pinnacle. Can't go any higher. When this becomes the reality from which we live in, we're no longer living from lack. We're not living trying to get to something more. We're actually living from the abundance of what we already have. So we change our orientation from trying to get to living from. So we are actually, right? This is where some other theology comes into play. We are actually already seated. We are already at the apex. See, the futurist mindset says that we're working towards it. Present reality thinking already has us there.
Yeah.
And if we're there, we're living from there to release what we already have.
Yeah.
So we're not trying to get hope. We already are seated with hope. So we become the releasers of that reality amongst the situations in life.
Amen.
That unlocks the boldness in us to step into the situation and begin to unlock the unconditional assurance Father's goodness prevails.
Wow.
Whether you're in the most delightful scenario of life or whether you're in the most grueling situation of life, Father's goodness prevails. How do we know this? We know this from Romans 8. For He takes all things and turns them what?
Good.
To good. I don't know about you, but I had to really work through that verse. I had to really dial into what in the world does it mean to turn it all to good? What does that mean? Because we could all throw up our idea of that, and it's going to be different for everybody, right? Which it probably could be, but I think there's probably something more solid that's going on there. If He's turning all things, all is going to this. I want to know what this is. Because that's where it's all. So at least for me, I came to the conclusion after quite a few years of grinding through that one verse that I really had to settle it in my own heart that there is nothing more good than seeing and knowing Father. No amount of comfort, no amount of ease, no amount of stress-free living, no amount of health, no amount of money, no amount of relationships, no amount of fame, no amount of influence, no amount of accomplishment adds up to the good. It can all be part of the journey for sure, but the good is seeing and knowing Father. And in my perspective, until our hearts get settled on that, we're still going to keep living something less than what's available. Because we're going to keep striving for something that we think we don't have. And if we can see it this way, it's actually Father who's turning all those things, not us. So we can have and live in and from an unconditional assurance. Father's goodness prevails regardless of what the conditions are going on in my life, because it's in the midst of those my heart is settled that I am going to see more of Father. So the crisis in my life, if I see more of Father, that crisis is worthwhile. In loss, if I can see something more of Father in loss, then it's worthwhile. If in abundance I can see something more of Father, then the abundance is worthwhile.
Yeah.
But too often we park abundance as the good in itself, and that's always too shallow. Abundance is worthless unless you see more Father in it. Tragedy is worthless unless we see more Father in it. I begin to get so messed up in this when I watch my best friend stand over his 6-year-old son's casket and do his funeral. And watch the goodness of God pale that tragedy. And you can understand that somehow in those moments you can still see the goodness of God. That's where you understand beauty doesn't come out of ashes as if it's somewhere else. It's actually the beauty that's in the middle of ashes. That you begin to then become unafraid of any circumstance.
Yeah, that's good.
You begin to have a boldness in you that does not require everything to be pleasant and easy or safe. You begin to be one that has a boldness that says, bring on the ashes, because there's beauty in the midst of them. I'm not signing up for ashes, but I'm not afraid of them.
Come on, that's good.
I'm not afraid of abundance. Now, you don't want to go over there and get all that too much because, that could lead you off over there because, that is the root of all evil. Evil is simply not seeing Father.
Yeah. That's good.
Wow. That's cool.
So sure, you could love something enough that would blind you from looking at Father, but if you're looking at Father the whole time, you're just living out goodness. So he turns all of these things to good. He takes all of what life throws at us and empowers us to see and know Him more fully and more completely, therefore being able to see and understand who we are as sons and daughters. This begins to move away the veneer and the vapor and the mirage of fear.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
Because love, the assurance, hope is the product of love. The assurance, goodness prevails, sets me in a different place where there's no way I'm saying all this next class around. You're getting this one, and the next one will be something else, undoubtedly. Because this ain't even close to where I was intending to be. Oops. We have this unconditional assurance. Father's goodness prevails. It releases boldness. I'm saying it like this. Matter of fact, I posted on Facebook this morning. Hope is the frequency that manifests boldness.
Man, that's good. Wait, I gotta go share that.
Hope is the frequency. It's on my face. You can just
Go share it.
go out there and hit
What's your
share.
last name? Rita.
Friend me, get on there, tag, whatever you do.
Repeat it one more time.
Hope is the frequency that manifests boldness.
Wow.
So I'm perceiving it like this. Hope is actually a frequency you can dial into.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can play on another station if you like. You can stay dialed into fear station, anxiety station.
Yeah.
Because anxiety and fear are two different things. Anxiety is actually trust in fear. Hope is actually trust in love. Because nobody has trust issues. Nobody has trust issues. You just might have misplaced trust. But you don't have trust issues. Those bound in anxiety or simply have their trust set in fear.
Wow.
But those of hope,
I guess they just.
That's. Oh.
Those locked in anxiety, right?
yes. Those in anxiety have their trust locked in fear. It's all in hope equals bold. I did 10-day studies, and 2 of the 10 days, 20% of this book is dealing with trust. Because that's the power of trust. Nobody has trust issues. There's no such thing as trust issues.
Makes sense because you have to trust in something.
You've just
It's
misplaced your
place
trust.
to do it.
So have you ever put your trust in fear? Or you've put your trust in love? So then you're either living in anxiety or you're living in hope.
That's really good.
Yep.
Hope is trust in love. Anxiety is trust in fear. And if we can identify that, and if you can evaluate within you where you have set your trust, you can begin to unwind yourself if anxiety is an issue. I know that because I've lived it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that because I've had to sort through, because of crisis and situations and things, and the place that those kind of circumstances want to tell you, fear,
Yeah.
the mirage of that looks so convincing. At some point, if you come over here and understand the depth and the solidness of Father's love and begin to set your trust there, hope is the frequency that you begin to vibrate in.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
It's really good.
And the frequency of hope, its vibration is so high that fear and anxiety.
So that, when I think about for the glory set before him, he endured, right, the shame or there is no
questioning in that verse that the glory will be manifested.
No, he wasn't even looking for what we understand glory. If we can understand glory as beauty, for the beauty of the manifestation of love, he laid his life on the cross. Because there is no greater expression.
There's no wishing in that.
No.
There's
No, I hope that, right? I hope.
Yep.
He wasn't in doubt. He wasn't fluctuating.
Yeah.
He was solid as a sun. That beauty is in this. The most dramatic and critical expression of the ugliness of man was displayed on the cross, simultaneously as the most beautiful expression of love. That wasn't something he was sitting there going, "Man, I hope this is not." You're not going through the cross.
Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. There's no boldness in that.
Yes.
That would actually be a poverty mindset. I don't know what you're pursuing in your life, what you're going after, but if you're going after it from the posture, well, maybe you're going at it from a poverty perspective. And you will go at it in a weaker format than if you're going at it from an abundance mindset that you already have. When you know, let's just play the reality game, right? You show up at the store and you've got $100 in your pocket and you're on purpose going and buying that object for $89. You have no lack of boldness about walking in there and getting it. Why? Because you already have the $100. It's already there. Give it to me. Let's go. You don't even take time. You don't even, right? Just beeline to that thing. Just right there, right to the checkout, out of the store. Let's go. Because you don't have time. You go. Let's go.
Let's enjoy this.
Let's do it. No problem. You're going to go buy a new car and you've got $30,000 in your account. You're writing the check out for that. You're not sitting there at the financing desk. I don't know if this is really the one I want or not. Maybe I should get that cheap one over there. I don't know if yeah. You don't do that. You don't lower your frequency to that.
You can see with athletes too. When an athlete is confident, they're just moving forward. There's no. The second you doubt or hesitate.
Hesitation is a game changer for most situations. Actually, our brains are wired, right, to protect ourselves. So when you hesitate about anything, that cup of coffee, any moment, if we don't even pay attention to how much we hesitate. Right now, you're even hesitating on some areas of, I don't even know if I want to believe all this. Instant, we don't even know it. That it's a blink of an eye reaction of hesitation that triggers actually the chemicals in our brain that put us towards anxiety and depression. Hesitation says, hold up, there's danger.
Yeah.
And so watch even of yourself how much you live from a posture of danger. Ooh, don't know, not sure. I don't know about that. All that hesitation is literally unlocking cortisol in you that amps up your stress levels.
And I'm still
You
trying
live,
to.
you live in that frequency all the time, and people can tell it.
Oh, yeah.
They feel it.
Yeah.
So when you walk in the room, you're actually unpleasant to be around, which actually is a repelling.
Yeah, it makes other people anxious because they can feel that.
So when you walk in sonship, in the reality, the present reality of who you are, in the understanding of hope, you actually have raised your frequency to now that which is attractive
Yeah.
to the good that's coming your direction instead of repelling it.
Yeah.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, I have no value.
Right?
Yeah.
But you walk into situations.
You teach
as
people.
such,
Yeah,
you
teach people how to
respond.
treat you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yep.
And now you've repelled people away from you because of what you're teaching them, and then it becomes true.
And so when we live out, and most of it, like, the way I position this, is most people, live and walk in that place of lack, poverty, valuelessness, worthlessness. Not so much because of the circumstances that have taught them that, although that's certainly the scenario. Most of it is because we don't believe we have. Wealth isn't about money. Wealth is about the mindset of having. And if you already have all things that pertain to life and godliness, Why don't we live from that? Live from that posture. Because if we don't, then we posture ourselves in lack as servants striving to obtain. Notice that oldest son out in the field, right?
Yeah.
Father told him all of this was here all the time. But you're too busy trying to function like a servant, trying to earn it, and simply stepping into what you already had. That youngest son did nothing wrong for asking for his inheritance. And we actually have zero proof that he had any aim to do anything wrong with it. One thing I know after working for 2 years in a men's addiction recovery center, working with men in life crippling crisis addiction, is that nobody in the world wakes up and says, I want to go be an addict. Nobody is in 6th grade writing their dream board.
Right.
Say, I'm going to be an addict. That's what I'm going to do. Nobody. Nobody is setting their life up to go do that. That prodigal son, that younger son, had no intention, I'm convinced, if we can use biblical imagination. That's what we're doing to say that he wanted to go do something wrong with it.
Yeah.
We're just making that up. We're just making it up from the doctrine of depravity.
Yeah.
Because he had something bad in him and he's just bent to go make a wreck of things. He came and asked for the inheritance so he could go waste it all. He had no proof that's what he wanted to do. He simply walked as his son and said, Father, may I have everything you provided for me?
He wanted to grow.
I am fully convinced of what we have no idea. Did he try to go build a business? Did he get married? Did his son get ran over by a camel? I don't know what happened. But I am more convinced that he went as a son. What father doesn't want your children to come and...
He went boldly.
He had zero doubt Father was going to provide for him.
You know, when you read that story, he went and asked for the inheritance and the father gave it to him. He stayed 3 days. As long as he was in the proximity of his father, he obviously didn't lose his inheritance. His father was happy for him to have his inheritance and have his relationship. And once he decided, well, the proximity needed to change and he moved away from father, that's where we don't know what his intentions were, but things started to kind of go awry.
I think you can say that, or we can also say I think he probably went out to try to utilize what his father gave him. And life throws a lot of curveballs. And I don't know what happened out there, but all I know is that it is the broken heart that doesn't know how to function well. So somewhere in this journey, we have no context of how long it was from getting to the pig pen. We have no frame of reference. If that was a decade, 2 decades, we have no idea. Did he try to go start a business and it didn't work? What broke in him? Somewhere, something happened that broke in him. And out of that, he began to self-medicate with prostitutes and riotous living and everything. That's what the broken heart does. Try to find some relief from the brokenness. So something went on in his life that demanded him to try to find self-relief by using his possessions. See, and I think we also, just while we're on that topic, I think we also have to get out of American understanding, Western thought, that inheritance means possessions. You actually read the scripture, it doesn't say God gave him his inheritance or that he wasted his inheritance. It says he wasted his possessions. He used up all of his possessions. Possessions aren't inheritance. He never lost his inheritance. His inheritance was his seat at the table. And that was never lost. He never lost his sonship. Never, ever, ever lost his sonship. We cannot say he lost his inheritance. We can only say he lost his possessions. His inheritance was what was always there for him, that in the midst of losing his possessions, still empowered him to sit at the table and enjoy all the other possessions. His inheritance was the beauty in the midst of this pig pit. And it was that beauty that was a moment of hope that unlocked him and said, no, my father's That orphan mindset was trying to dominate and say, well, at least I could go back and be a slave and maybe get a few crumbs off the table. But there was something in him because of what he understood of love. There was a frequency of hope that unlocked and manifested a boldness in him that says, I'm getting up out of this pig pen and I'm heading on back to Dad. And when he got back there, the reality of his father's goodness was more than he even perceived. That's how the pig pen was turned to good. He got to see more of his father than he understood before he was in the pig pen. I'm not afraid of pig pens. I'm not trying to go waste all my stuff. I'm not trying to get on a road to a pig pen, but I'm bold enough to say Father's goodness prevails even in the midst of pig pens. So I have nothing to fear. Truly have nothing to fear. And I can go over here and posture myself within fear. And I'm certainly still working on areas where fear has controlled my thinking. But it's the reality of hope that I want to dial myself back into so that I live from a boldness that moves me into capacities that I've not stepped into yet. Hope becomes the boldness, and we'll just take it full circle back to the verse I tried to give us clear back at the beginning. 2 Corinthians chapter 3:12. Paul says, we have this hope. So we're very bold. We have. Not trying to get. Not looking to have someday. It's not deferred. It's not somewhere down there.